So tell me a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do creatively.
Well, I started out as a writer for adults, like a songwriter, and I like to say that I was like narrowing the gap between me and Carole King, and that was really a lot of hard work. And then my niece was born, and I just became like obsessed with her, and she got like really obsessed with Aunt Bari songs. So I was like watching her react to some of these songs, and it was so much fun, and I thought, well, maybe I should start writing more songs for her. And then that's how I transitioned into writing songs for kids. And at the same time that I was having a music career, I actually started getting panic attacks, like thank you so much, and anxiety, and everything was a problem. Everything was a problem. And I looked for a lot of ways to heal myself, and yoga and meditation were one of the main ways. So I learned a lot about yoga, and I became certified to teach. And then I started to turn some of the songs into more yoga songs, because now I was working with more of my niece's friends and young children, but now I was using more yoga, and then everything kind of came together that way. So that's kind of what I do.
So where were you living when all that happened?
I was living very broke-like in Manhattan on 24th and Lex in a family-owned building, but I was traveling a lot. I was a singer-songwriter on the road. I was playing a lot of colleges, and I was traveling to like Nebraska and Minneapolis and Iowa, and I played Fargo, North Dakota, I think 20 times. My first sold-out show was in Fargo, and it was hilarious. And so yeah, and I was in debt, but when I made the shift to kids music, actually, that's when I started to make money to start to pay back my bills, and then eventually that led to lots of great things, and we were able to buy the house up here.
So what kind of songs were you writing when you were performing for adults, and then how did that change when you started doing kids music?
You know, the songs for adults were basically why me kind of songs, you know, a lot of romantic things. Yeah, I had boyfriends, and boyfriends that loved you and boyfriends that didn't love you and whatever, and, you know, just plight of the human soul kind of stuff. But, you know, it's funny, I used to complain that I didn't really feel like I had a point of view as an adult singer-songwriter, because I had so many influences, like artists from the 70s and Tom Petty and Sheryl Crow and, you know, yada, yada, yada. And I really was like craving this point of view. And some artists just arrive like intact, you know, you just know who they are. Like, right, you know, Neil Young was writing those songs when he was 20, and I sure as heck wasn't. But when I started writing for kids, I had more of an identity, because I was kind of like a singer-songwriter for kids. So it wasn't too kiddie, and it had sort of like a pop rock feel. And then because of all the movement that I naturally did and yoga, like that was all naturally there. And you sort of knew what a Bari song was for kids, and that really stood out.
And so then what happened? How did the kids music career grow?
Well, actually, John Medeski, God bless him, he gave me a cabin to try to like write more songs. And I came up to Woodstock, and I wrote a lot of those songs. And I had already written a lot of my adult songs in Woodstock at Birdcliff at the Art Colony. So I was doing all that, and then one weekend, after like literally my car was towed in New York City, and I had to like get it back with all these parking tickets, and I was like crying, and I still went up to John's cabin that weekend because that's when it was free. But I was thinking about my niece, you know, and I just wrote all these songs for her. And in that weekend, I had no idea, but it turns out I wrote like a hit song for kids. It was called A Day at the Beach. I didn't know. I was like, oh, this one's fun. And I went back to New York, and I showed it for a few people, and they're like, that's pretty good. And one of the people in my life actually booked the Long Island Children's Museum. He did events there, and he's like, let's do events. Let's do concerts for kids. Here's some money. Get a band. And so everything just started going from there, you know?
And so you got a band from people you knew in Woodstock or in the city, or what was that about?
Well, that's kind of funny. I got a band from people I knew in the city, and I was still very much in my adult world when I started that. So there was a bass player that I knew, Ben, and I called Ben, and his roommate answered. His roommate, Dred, answered. And I was like, oh, I need Ben's number. I'm starting a kids band. And Dred said, well, I could play Rings Around That Guy. And I'm like, but you're a piano player. And he was an amazing piano player. He was a jazz musician. He played with Nora Jones. He was so great. But he's like, no, I like playing bass. He's like, it'd be fun to play for kids. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. So he's like, I'll be in your band. So I was like, okay, you know, I'm like, who should play drums? And he said, oh, we'll get Diego. So Diego was cool. He played with Los Lobos, whatever. And Diego couldn't make it. So Diego, at our first rehearsal, so Diego sent his friend Eric. And it's me, Dred, and Eric. And we just got into this room from like the clear grace of God. Like Dred was this like pot-smoking lunatic, you know. Eric was from like Iowa and very buttoned up. And I was sort of somewhere in the middle. And we started playing these kid songs. And honestly, the chemistry was just off the charts. And we've been together for like 12 years.
That's wild. That's wild. And so somewhere in this, you went back to Woodstock. You mentioned you have a house here. Where's that? How did that happen?
So about 4 years ago, I got a TV show, Yoga Palooza, and I made money doing TV. And I socked away half of it because I had this dream, because I really wanted to live in Woodstock. And my husband and I, we got married, and he's in the music business. He had a place in Long Beach. And he's like, oh, it's on the water. I'm like, it's on the water, but it's like a city, and there's 30,000 people here. And I'm like, want to move to Woodstock. And he's like, yeah, maybe one day when we're like 50 or something. I'm like, I want to move to Woodstock now, you know. And finally, I convinced him to put the house on sale, and then the apartment. And then Sandy came, incredibly, to Long Beach and everywhere. And we were so lucky. Our building was so lucky. There was some damage. The apartment was okay. And that actually helped sell it, because people could move to Long Beach and they knew that, you know, the apartment survived Sandy. So we were able to sell it and move up here. And now we're in Saugerties, and it's the best. Oh my gosh, pinch me.
So you first came to Woodstock to work, to sort of woodshed in the Birdcliff Art Colony, and then coincidentally John Badesky had a cabin here. But why Woodstock? I mean, what is it, other than, you know, you knew some people around, or why did you choose this town, this area, this part of the Catskills, and what does it have that other places didn't?
So my connection to Woodstock happened, I had a boyfriend at the time, Richard Julian, and he was coming, he had a show at Alfred University. And we were driving back to the city, and he's like, oh, I know a good place to stop for dinner, because he was like obsessed with food. And we pulled into Woodstock, and we went to the Bear. This was like 20 years ago. We went to the Bear, and I was reading the menu and all about like Albert Grossman and Sally Grossman and Janis Joplin and the band. And it was like the fall, and you could see the you know, rocks lit up and the stones and the water. And then I had this great meal, this like fall meal, like pumpkins and pasta and wine. And I was like, I want to live here. Like, this is where I'm going to live. And he's like, what? I'm like, I'm moving here. I am moving to this freaking town. And literally, I got home and I started making calls, you know, like I was traveling a lot at the time and doing those gigs out in Nebraska, wherever the hell, but I had the summers off. And I found out about the Birdcliff Art Colony, and I came up here to do that. And I was literally an artist in residence on and off for like 12 years. I mean, I wrote most of my songs in Birdcliff. Yeah.
And so being up here, even before you bought a house here, you made friends, you met musicians, and are you working with any of them today?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, I met Gary from WDST, who runs Mountain Jam, and Gary and I have done I think we've done some events together. Pete Kagan I met, yeah, and you know, sure. I mean, I definitely had like quite a few people that I jam with that I'm sort of flying out of my head. But now that I've moved here, now I met Lee Falco and Brandon Morrison and Will Bryant, and we started the Buried Treasure Band, which is like unbelievable. I've always wanted to have this band based on Tom Petty's radio show, Buried Treasure, so we do all these like incredible songs. And they're unbelievable, and I knew they were unbelievable, and now, you know, a year later, they're playing with Donald Fagen, and yes, you know, of course they are, and but they'll come back one day. One day they'll come back. But yeah, no, there's just being here. I think there's like more artists per capita in the Hudson Valley than like anywhere in the world. And there were just, I used to say what I loved about Manhattan were the people, and now all those people are here. They're all here. And we could have these dinner parties with incredible food and amazing conversation. The hang here is so different. I cannot meet a friend in the city and like you're rushed in there, you know, and you're trying to have like a conversation and a meal. It's like, here are hangs, you know, they last for like 6-8 hours or 4 hours, you know. Everything about it is made for relationships and connection to source and connection to the earth and all of that. And it just makes for a much richer garden to sow seeds of friendship and music and everything.
Very cool. And how have you changed since you moved up here full time?
I'm older. It costs a lot of money to live here. Every time I go, you know, it's like, oh my God, you know, this farm-raised steak costs, you know, whatever, but that's fine. I had no idea I could garden. I mean, I think I could garden, but I have a lot of gardens now. I was really starting from scratch where like you put the root in the ground and the root goes in first. But I met Elena Zhang and she's like an incredible artist, but she's an amazing gardener. And she really showed me how to garden and that's been just unbelievable. So I just love how have I changed. You know, I think the city was all about ambition, I do have to say. It was always how busy you are, what you have going on, what you got hustling, you know. Here it's like, let's go kayaking, let's go paddleboarding, like look at the sun, look at like, you know, did you catch the rainstorm yesterday? Look at the stars, you know. And it's not like we don't have to work, but I think we're all turned on by other things and it's not just ambition. And it's just living a natural, happy, fulfilling life, you know? So yeah, that's like at the top of my agenda now. And I have to work to pay for it, so. Someone's got to pay for this lifestyle. Huh.
Well, the Catskills are definitely better off having you up here.
Thank you.
So what's next? Last question.
What's next? Well, I'd like to do more adult buried treasure gigs. Thank you more, please. And I'm creating a book for children based on one of my popular songs. And I think you know, it's funny, I've written so many songs and I'm not feeling like I need to be writing as much as I like playing guitar. But I would like to create some other products, a little book of relaxation for kids and some relaxation music for that. More concerts and events and all of that, but and still like relaxation and tea in the morning and I don't know, just what's next I think is just more of what is, you know, definitely. So good.
That's great. Well, thanks for talking with us.
Thank you.